HiRevz Media is sponsored by Born to Ride Motorcycle Magazine. Check out borntoride.com. All right, guys, got the Fiat in the shop and having a little bit of a shifter problem. So going down the road the other day, the shifter started spinning, and I can see now what was going on was this little detent at the top up here had popped itself up and the whole thing was like moving around. You tried to get in first, and it was acting crazy. And this is the shifter extension. That's a separate piece that goes on. There's a rubber piece up in there that goes in here, a nylon piece, another rubber grommet, and another nylon piece. Mine was not locked together, and supposedly this can be a little bit aggravating to pop down. You kind of have to get a hook up in there and pull down on it this way. And then putting it back on, they said the easiest way is to wrap a zip tie around this to get it snapped back up in there. So we'll see how that goes. But the nut that goes on the end of this is down below all of these pieces, and you see it right here on the diagram, the way all these pieces kind of stack together. That's all supposed to be in there, and then this ball end is supposed to be riding inside of that detent down in there. So right now all these pieces are just kind of moved around, just so I could figure out how to shift it enough to drive it over here to the shop. I made it here, drove it home the rest of the way the other day in third gear all the way home, which was not fun. But now we've got to get the car lifted up and get the plate, the 3 bolts off the bottom, so that we can get to all this. And then Cameron's going to be in here holding down on the shifter and the spring mechanism. Get all that lined up here, and then we can kind of show you how everything snaps back together. All right, guys, we got Cameron in the car. He's gonna be holding down on the shifter for us because we're gonna have spring pressure when we try to put it all back together. And we're using the rubber blocks, and went ahead and went all the way over to where it's going to line up with this part of the trailing arms, because that's a pretty strong spot there. There are jacking spots here and on the inside, but that seems a little stronger being here with these rubber blocks. And then in the front, we've got a rubber block going all the way over to the subframe, and then we're getting one in over there, and again get another block at that trailing arm. So that looks like the strongest places to lift this thing. Should be good. All right, guys, so we got it lifted up a little ways now, and seems pretty secure. I think it's gonna be okay. All right, guys, so there it is. There's the plate. There's the 3 bolts. Gonna pull those out. Another thing good to look at while you're under here is the guibo. This one's like brand new, nice and hard, but still, you know, a little bit supple, but it's nice and soft. It's not sticky or nothing like that. No cracks in it. Something you definitely want to look at because you don't want these things falling. Luckily, there is a spot where this one can drop to, but it's going to be banging against everything if it comes loose. Check the carrier bearing here. All that looks pretty good. A little bit of movement, nothing crazy. All the U-joints look good, so it should be good to go. Let's go ahead and pull these down and check that nut on there. It's a little tight. Be very hard to do that middle one there without something on there to get to it. All right, guys, so this is kind of how this all goes together, just like this. So when the shifter rod comes down, it actually presses against the spring, and that's your reverse lockout. Then that kind of goes down, and it kind of rides like this as you shift it through. So then you also have this piece and the bottom housing that all gets held together. And then you've got an internal ball in here, and then a nut and some other pieces up under here. So we gotta get these apart, and then we can try to fix that back on. While it's up in there, we'll have to get the nut on it. All right, guys, so here is the bottom plate on there. This is gasketed, and there's some RTV on here. And then this is that plastic part. And then inside here is the nut and the washer, and then the internal ball mechanism there. So in the car, we've got to put the spring back, this goes in, and then the internal ball will drop back in here onto the shaft, and then the washer and the nut. Get all that tightened together. Like I said, Cameron's gonna be holding down from the top so we can get all that together. And then we're gonna cap it back off of this, put some new RTV on it and whatnot, and see if we can get it to seal up. All right, guys, so I've sprayed the shaft coming down with brake cleaner, and I've cleaned all of these pieces really good with brake cleaner. The only reason I'm doing that is because this is a locking nut. You can see the oblongness there. It's supposed to get really tight. This one's not doing that very much. So I'm gonna put some blue Loctite on it, but everything's gotta be pretty clean. Once that's on there and set where I want it, everything's good, then I'm gonna pack this full of grease. After that, of course, it's getting a little bit oily anyways. I just want the blue Loctite to set up. All right, guys, so it's back together now. Got the nut and everything sandwiched together, which for us was a 3-person job. Cameron pushing down on the shifter against the spring, me pushing up against the spring, and then holding it, everything in together. And Daddy had to put some RTV on the end of the washer just to hold it to the nut, and then run the nut up in there on an extension, all 3 of us at the same time, just to get this thing to hold. So, but anyways, it's on up in there, and got the plate on the bottom, everything screwed in. This plate is directional, and so is the plastic piece. It's got one way it's got to go. But all that's back together, so now we're gonna drop the car down and grease the other side. All right, guys, so the top side, the shifter feels awesome. Everything feels better than it has the whole time. And the D10 is correct, and now when you push it down, that's your reverse lockout right there. So this little metal tab won't allow it to go back unless you push it under it. But everything is correct. So I'm just gonna pump some grease through here, and there's already a little bit of grease from where I pumped it from the bottom. I'm gonna put some into this little ball socket deal, just to put some on it. And then put the rubber piece back down, fit it all back under the metal here, and then I've got some foam. It's got to go back down, and then we'll attach this back. All right, guys, so now somebody had added some like bed foam to it, just to add a little bit more insulation, seal this gap up. So I shoved that back down there, which works pretty good. But yeah, the shifter feels so much better. I mean, it's not bad at all now. That's awesome. So now this piece, we got to wrap a zip tie around this, and get that kind of held together so we can get it up in the chrome piece here. And then you slide the zip down and then cut it off. But that's gonna get all that held together if I wanted it to be correct and not just spinning around and floating around like it was initially. All right, guys, the shifter is back in place. Everything's hooked up, working good again. And an update on this shifter ball. It doesn't match anymore, even though it previously did. You can tell up under there is still kind of that reddish look, but the sun has just beamed down on it. So obviously this isn't UV protected. But anyways, everything's good for now.
1 week later.
All right, guys, back in the shop again, and the nut started to work its way off again. I felt the shifter get kind of loose, start to spin a little bit again. Then I thought, at least I thought it was, and then it progressively got worse, and I knew that it was. So decided to come back over here. It's still hanging in there, probably by a thread. So hopefully we can leave the nut that's on there. We're gonna run it on up and then put one of the nylon lock nuts on there. So like this, get one of those put on there behind the nut that's on there, just so we don't have to take it all the way apart. And it should drop down okay for us to do that the second time, but it still sucks having to do it again. All right, guys, so there's the plate off of it now, and you can see just barely there's like one thread left on that nut, so it is just barely hanging on. So gonna get that ran up and then put the new nut on there and then get it back in. All right, guys, so the nylon lock nut is on there, and we couldn't double stack them like I was hoping, so we had to take it all apart and go through that again, trying to get everything put together. But this time, just Eddie and I were able to do it and get it held down. All right, guys, so that worked. Get the nylon on there, everything's bolted back up, and the shifter feels good again. So that should have it set now forever. Knock on wood, but hopefully it should be good.
Time to get out and play. AMSOIL delivers the ultimate protection for your vehicles and equipment. Fast, free shipping right to your door. Spend $100 and shipping is on us. Order now at AMSOIL.com.